Red Bull GRCs are now available on iRacing. I personally put my blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, developing the cars, the tracks, the dirt, making sure it is authentic as possible, and I really think you guys are going to love it. The best part is that this 600 horsepower Volkswagen Beetle is free to all members. So get signed up now and come race me online.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to V8 Online's coverage of the iRacing official V8 Supercar Series. Tonight we head to Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for round 7 of this very, very entertaining and enthralling series. Jay Kennedy, and alongside me tonight, Zach Hanlon. I'm filling in for Bo Albert tonight, who's obviously not here with some internet issues. But Zach, it's been a pretty fantastic series this season so far.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jay. I think the real reason, by the way, that Bo's not with us tonight is he got his pro license last week. So big congrats to you, Bo. I think now he thinks he's a bit better than everyone, so he doesn't have to join us here in the iRacing official V8's broadcast. But you're absolutely right, Jay. There has been some fantastic racing the last couple of weeks. We've been following this series. Obviously, our championship leader, Marlon J. McMullen, pulled a good result last week to continue his hopes of fulfilling a championship winning title this season, as he's now out on track, as are all the other cars, putting in qualifying times at this fantastic circuit, one of the holy grail circuits of the racing world, one that everyone loves to come to. Maybe not everyone, but I know I definitely do. What are your thoughts on the track, Jay?
Yeah, it's always been interesting racing with the V8 at Spa. I know personally driving Spa, I'm not a big fan of driving. I love watching racing here though, because the nature of the circuit just breeds close, tight racing, and not easy to pass. Very, very rewarding if you get it right, but very, very nasty if you get it wrong. So yeah, it's a really challenging circuit, one that really puts on a good show to watch racing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've just had our first time put down in the qualifying session from our championship leader, Marlon J. McMullen. He shoots in at 2:21.393. Now, I don't know if that's any good in a V8 Supercar, but it does look like a very fetching time if you're in a GT3 car even. So that's a pretty impressive time there. We've got Dane Warren following him up at the moment on a 21.6, so 3/10 gap up to the front there. He's followed closely as well by Corey Preston and Thomas Hinds. So some nice times going up on the board here at the moment. We've got a couple of faces in here as well that we haven't seen the last couple of weeks. Emily Jones returns to us. We've got Mario Vlasic in here as well. Sharon Mason, and I think a couple of our main championship contenders are here as well. We've got Brett Loxton, who had a bit of a fuel blunder back last week at Imola. Cooper Webster making a return as well, and Corey Preston, who's rejoining us after his spectacular slide into the pit entry wall at Montreal. So it looks like we've got some quality drivers here, a couple of drivers who took the week off last week. Imola is one of those tracks, I guess, where you probably do need a little more practice than most, but good to see a nice competitive full grid here today.
Yep, so we've got 23 cars in the race. Dane Warren's actually already left the circuit, so he's aborted his second attempt at a lap. So as it is right now, Marlon McMullen secure on pole, unless Corey Preston can pull out something spectacular. Finding 6/10 around Spa is quite difficult to do, but it'll be interesting to see if anyone can get closer to that time of Marlon's, which looks very, very good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one person who will not be matching that time is Emily Jones. She just had a massive slide coming up through Eau Rouge there.
Oh, and another
one. Maybe Emily needs to. Yeah, she's had another one there and had a bit of a half spin. So I think she'll have to be content with at least at this stage 15th position. She looks like she's just having a bit of fun now. But she has a nice little slide there. But yeah, Marlon did continue on his second lap. However, he did not improve. And I'll just check on Corey Preston as well. He's just finishing round the final corner out of the bus stop chicane, and he puts in a 2:22.2, which is 2/10 lower than his previous best lap. But Brian Borg has improved and slid himself just ahead of Corey Preston for that more preferred line on the second row of the grid. So with only 20 seconds left in this qualifying session, I don't think that we're going to see anyone else make a jump unless Brenton O'Brien wants to chuck it up there on the pole. He does cross the line and pops himself up into 19th from a non-time position. So got in there just by the skinny of teeth, Brenton. Well done. But yeah, very nice looking grid tonight. So we've got Marlon J. McMullen, who has qualified on pole with the 2:21.3. He'll be followed up by Dane Warren, who is another one of our championship contenders, who's been showing a lot of pace hasn't been able to put it all into a race and bring it all home together. So we'll see how he does tonight. Brian Borg and Corey Preston taking out your second row there with Thomas Hinz and Cooper Webster, on row 3. Brett Loxton looking for a better result from his shambles last week in P7 with Steve Jansen in P8. Julian Shine in position number 9 on a 2:22.9, and we've got Jamie McKnight rounding out the top 10 on a 2:23.0.
And we've got Job Stewart next in 11th with Craig Jones joining him on the 6th row. Then we've got Shannon Mason, Mario Vlasic, Braden Bateman and Emily Jones up to 16th, and Stephen Varga, David Miller, Brenton O'Brien, Alvin Fluridan and Laurent Benzo, Keith Wheeler and Matt Morris. The 23 cars we have for this race, which looks like we're ready to go. It looks like the cars are all starting to grid up and we're about to get this one underway.
Yeah, just got a couple more cars to grid up. Jay, are we expecting any pit stops in tonight's race?
I'm fairly sure there will be a pit stop. It is fuel limited to about 71 litres or so. So 120 Ks in length this race or thereabouts. So there will be a pit stop, I'm fairly sure, because it is fairly fuel hungry, this circuit. Around about 5.5 litres a lap required for a lap of this track. So obviously fairly long, 207 Ks in length. So we'll chew the fuel. Looks like most of the grid is now there and we're ready to go.
I think we are. So the guys are pulling first gear. The revs rise. The lights are counting down. And Malik McMullen has a good look down at the first corner as they are away. Nice, smooth start by the two guys on the front row. But Dane Warren has gotten a better start and is looking to the outside of turn 1. And it's going to be a drag race down to Eau Rouge. Dane Warren just got a bit of a better exit there. He does have the preferred line down into Eau Rouge, so I would not doubt seeing him prevailing at the top of that hill. Corey Preston again moving ahead of Brian Borg. He got a nice start too. As everyone just kind of files into single line, with the exception of Emily Jones, who's just had a bit of a tag there. I believe that was from Braden Bateman. So Emily hemorrhaging a couple of positions at the moment, and
a slowdown too. So she's got to check up.
And a slowdown. That's pretty devastating for the start of Emily's race. As we look through the field here.
Look at the front. Like Corey Preston's actually the one that's the biggest surprise at the start of this race. He's now right on the tail of Mullen McMullen and applying a lot of pressure right now. So Preston, who's running a new look for his livery, a retro livery, he's been running now for the start of this season, and he's applying a lot of pressure to McMullen, and that's meaning Warren's starting to check out already.
Yeah, Corey is looking very good at the moment. Maybe just a little more confident on cold tyres around this track. It is a pretty cool track today with only 31 degrees. Normally in these conditions we might see up around a 40-degree track. And he is looking very racy here. He's taking a couple of different lines there to Marlon and really harassing the back of him. I'm surprised to see Corey maybe pull a move up into the bus stop here if he can get a nice clean exit coming out of this corner, and he does. He is right on the back of Marlon there, and he pulls to the outside line for Blanchimont. I don't think you'd want to go too wide in an F1 car unless your name's Max Verstappen, let alone in a V8. And
done it.
McMullen has conceded that position to Corey Preston, so very nice start there from Corey, but Dane has checked out a little bit.
Oh,
too much.
Oh, around goes Preston.
Oh, and Corey's
big
gone
contact. Big hit from McMullen, who absolutely missed his braking marker, made massive contact into the back of Corey Preston. He'll have to slow down to give up the time penalty that he'll get as well for cutting the corner. Preston's way back in last. McMullen is dropping all the way back through the field. And these are these little hiccups that we talk about with championship implications. This is really going to hurt McMullen right now, seeing Warren drive away.
McMullen's just pulled off to the exit side of turn 1 and he's exited the car. So could that be day done for Marlon McMullen in less than around about a lap? Very disappointing. Corey Preston's going to have a lot of work to do, and his car's got a tiny bit of damage to the rear boot area as well, but not as much as the car that he's passing right now, Braden Bateman. So,
Oh, Emily Jones just got hip and shouldered by Laurie Benso, and they're still side by side as Jones gets back onto the circuit. That was fairly heavy contact, and Jones is now checking up to eliminate that slowdown. And we were saying about very, very costly circuit if you do run off the track. The slowdown penalties here are very, very severe. So even getting forced wide or forced off the circuit as Jones now into the fence.
yeah, she's in the fence.
This is race done.
Yeah, she's already, wow, she disconnected before she even stopped.
I think
so.
that's an old F4 that just
I
happened
think-
there, or
I
a flick
think
the
that
switch
would
on the
be-
wall and turn the power off. It's,
Stream off, race off, it's all over. So, two of
Brian
our
Borg.
championship contenders already out of this race.
Behind
Brian
Brian
Borg,
Borg's under all sorts of pressure, isn't it?
He
People
is.
from Thomas Inns.
There's a good little pack here. These guys are probably within 3/10 of each other, these three cars here, as they're coming down through up to Blanchimont into the bus stop chicane, which you would have to say is probably one of the three really the most opportunistic places you can get an overtake here, or the most reliable places you can get an overtake. But a couple of those cars just getting a bit squirrely through Blanchimont there, and they're all just going to tuck in and stay as they were. Well, it's been a pretty interesting first couple of laps here.
It's been full on, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been.
Big winner out of all of this has been Brett Loxton, who's managed to check out and got himself into second. And he's now with Brian Borg behind him. Borg's probably concentrating a little bit more on his rear vision mirror than Loxton ahead.
Yeah, you're right. And Thomas Hinz and Cooper Webster are actually having a bit of a drag race down into Eau Rouge there. Thomas just decided to pull it in, but that's really important for Brett's championship. He's right up there in P number 3 at the moment, behind Brady Myers and Marlon McMahon. Brady obviously not here tonight, and Marlon is already out of the race, so Brett could be the one to win big here, but Dane Warren is also coming up through those championship standings. Him not having done as many, completed as many races as his fellow V8 Supercar drivers.
Well, actually, with the championship, with those drop rounds included, of course, the worst 4 point scoring rounds as Webster runs a little bit wide. The worst 4 scoring rounds get removed, which removing those actually put about 25 points separating first and second in the championship. So this really will change how this championship fight goes on into next week. We'll see it very, very tight.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because we've got, if you do take those drop races into account, we have Marlon in the lead, followed by Dane Warren, followed by Brady Myers, then Corey Preston, Emily Jones. So Emily not capitalising. Corey has been knocked out from second position. Marlon is obviously, he knocked out Corey and is now subsequently out of the race. So Dane Warren is the guy who can take a bit of a stand here and go, all right, I've made a couple of mistakes the last couple of weeks. Now it's your guys' turn, and I'm just going to run away from it. And at the moment, he has 4.1 second advantage, and I have absolutely no doubt that that will increase as they come over the timing line this time around. But Brett Loxton as well, again for his championship, that is looking very, very positive for him. But he is sitting behind everyone I just previously mentioned, so he is going to have to do some work.
It's going back in the field. Corey Preston side by side with Braden Bateman, and they actually made side by side work, and Preston will finally get the spot. They moves now up into 18th position. They've got Keith Wheeler and Lurian Benso in behind. Go back up the field. Vlasic has just run wide as well.
Dane's extended his lead by 1.4 seconds on that lap alone, so he has really got the field under control right now, which is very good for him. But yeah, there's a nice little train from second through to... My JRT is not acting very kindly with me there, but I think there's about 5 positions there. They're all within 2.5 seconds of each other, so just have to keep an eye on how everything's brewing. Is a little further back, Brenton O'Brien's having a look on David Miller. Had a nice run coming out of Eau Rouge, but he's going to just keep it nice and cruisy. Brenton will just probably plot away and let other people make mistakes and get the positions where he can rather than being too aggressive himself.
A cool new look too for those redback cars with the orange and blue as opposed to the black and red that we'd normally see those guys in.
Yeah, very nice looking car there. I don't know if that's tied with some new sponsorship.
Yep, with
Don't
Bow Repairs jumped on board and sponsoring those guys for this season. So it's very, very good to have pretty decent sponsor in Bow Repairs jumping on board.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Bow Repairs, I'm sure, are very happy that they don't have to fork out all the tyres that these guys are using in their stints tonight. But it's always good seeing teams pick up, you know, not any sponsor is good, but it's nice as well to see that there are companies who don't necessarily have investments in, you know, computer technology or esports or anything like that, but seeing the marketing opportunities available. Obviously, you know, I come from ERT, we've got Logitech, we're very heavily involved in having many esports teams and obviously make computer hardware. But, you know, it's nice seeing Bow Repairs, a tyre company, which is obviously very relatable to cars, jumping on board, and I hope we see a lot more stuff like that in the future because it's only going to help our sport grow. And I think a lot of people who are you know, having a look at this stuff now are actually realizing this is a very competitive sport not to be messed around with, and it's really good corporate opportunities opening
big
up.
crash back in the field. Sorry, mate. We've got Matt Morris facing the wrong direction, and there was another car stopped as well. We'll try and get a CPR replay. Sorry to cut you off there, but that was...
No, that's not a problem, mate. I think that actually could have been Craig Jones who...
Yeah, he's dropped down through the field. He was side by side with Mario Vlasic too, so maybe he was involved as well.
No, it doesn't look like it, Jay. It looks like they are... Well, I'm just watching Craig turn himself back around.
Incidents.
Yeah, well, Craig got himself he just got a little happy on the gas and then settled down and tried to go again and just got too heavy on it again. But I didn't see an incident involving any other cars there. It just seemed to be Craig all on his own. Could have been some slight contact, but I don't think that it really would have made any difference to how that turned out for him, to be completely honest.
Just going back to another CPR replay with Cooper Webster side by side with Brian Borg, and Borg's held it around the outside and has maintained his third position, and Loxton's checked out a little bit while these guys were battling, and Hinz has got back onto the tail. Just behind them as well, Jamie McKnight, who's doing a great job moving his way forward through the field each and every week. We've got Steve Jansen tucked in underneath his rear wing. We've got some good close tight battles the whole way through this field at the moment.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this track as well is, you know, it's such a long circuit. You can be very fast in one section of the track and lose all of your time in another section of the track compared to other drivers. It's one of those tracks where a certain part of the track might suit you very well, and another portion of the track might not suit you very well at all, or, you know, you have to make a compromise in the setup to be better in one area or another. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, throughout this race if there are any points at which these guys are strong, as Brian Borg gets very, very loose coming out of Blanchemont there on the brakes hard into the bus stop. But it is definitely one of those tracks where you can see guys half a second apart, 1 section of the lap, and then all of a sudden they're all within 10th again and battling away. So these guys have been having a couple of drag races here and there. We haven't really seen too many position changes at this stage. We do have some side-by-side action further in the field. Stephen Varga just getting overtaken there around the outside by Calvin. I'm going to butcher this, but Fordent. Pardon me, Calvin. But nice move there around the outside into turn one. And now Calvin will probably start looking, if he can, to set up Brenton O'Brien and David Miller. But there's a bit of a gap ahead of those guys. Bit of a gap up there. Corey Preston's doing pretty well at the moment. He's moved himself up into 16th position, so recovering quite well there.
O'Brien up the inside. Move done. Or is it? Oh, I thought Miller was going to come back and get Brenton back around the outside, but good move from Brenton O'Brien. Now up into 11th, but under pressure still from David Miller. He's going to hold on for now. Calvin's right in this now.
Yeah, but
Whoa.
Calvin's run very, very wide, running through before the corner with no name, and that's not going to help him on his charge through this little pack here. Yeah, Brenton, nice little move there, keeping it nice and defensive, and when David tried to come back at him, wasn't having any of it, closed his line back up and said, no mate, that one is for me, thank you very much. These guys are pretty close comparatively to everyone else on the field, although we do have Julian Shine and Mario Vlasic. These guys are battling away. According to my screen, Julian does have a little bit of damage, and
Yeah, I
he's
can see
driving
that
that
too.
car very aggressively at the moment. He's getting on the gas pedal very, very heavily, and that might allow Mario to get a bit of a run here as they come up through Blanchimont. Mario's going to stick his nose up the inside, but Julian says no thank you. I don't think we'll be doing that today. Mario's got a very good run out of on there, but not enough quite to attempt any sort of overtaking maneuver. So these guys still just brewing away.
Back to the battle
Very
for
nicely.
second. It's on because Borg having a look on Loxton. And Cooper Webster's now going to get in there too. So we've got these four. This is for the second, third, fourth and fifth positions. Thomas Hin's a little bit further back, but well and truly in the draft range. I wouldn't be surprised if we see side by side down the straight here.
No, not at all. These guys have floated up on Brett just in the last lap, and Brett didn't get a super fantastic run out of that corner, up out of Eau Rouge. Brian Borg's got a very nice run here, and he's going to look down the inside. G'day, how you going? I'll have that one, thank you. And he slides on through nicely. Brett's not going to put up too much of a challenge on that one, because I don't think he wants to make himself susceptible to Cooper Webster and Thomas Hins right behind him. This pack is very, very close now. Webster just having a little look, maybe just finding his braking mark, or just saying to Brett, you know, I'm as fast as the guy ahead of you, so you better get a move on or I'm going to come on through as well. And Brett's not looking as comfortable as he did when he had that clean air. It's obviously a lot more stressful in the car when you're in a situation like this, where you've got a car 310 either side of you. But Brett holding on for the time being, just getting a bit of a slide through there. Cooper's keeping it nice and smooth. Has a look for down the inside. Very nice move there. Just rubbing doors slightly. And Cooper's going to try go around the outside. Whoa! Ready, boy! Keep it in there, mate. Very nicely held, but unfortunately that was enough to have to concede that position to Cooper Webster there. Not really surprising, but that was a very, very big slide, as I said. Brett not looking as comfortable as he did when he had that clean air out ahead of him, and if he wants to keep himself in this championship contention, he's just going to have to calm down as he runs very, very wide for Blanchimont again. And that's going to allow Thomas Hins to have a run around the outside. And Brett just braking early, tucking in. Maybe a bit of damage control there as he's actually coming into the pits. So
maybe the first to jump and decide to fill up the tank to get it home from here.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that we might see, I guess the latest pit stop window would have been slightly up at the halfway mark. I was going to say probably around lap 13 or 14, so he's got 13 laps to go in this race, or could it even be, no it is, he does have 13 laps to go in this race, so if he fills up now, you're quite right Jay, he could very well get to the end, and
just
being in
getting a replay,
air,
sorry to cut you off, just seeing a replay of a big incident for Matt Morris, and he's actually out of the race from that. So Matt Morris succumbed to damage from that incident, and that was a very, very big moment for Morris, and just coming back live to McKnight under pressure from Steve Jansen, and they're not far off the back of that Thomas Hins, Cooper Webster and Brian Borg battle.
No, you're absolutely right. I've just checked out where Brett Loxton has come out as well. He's come out just behind Laurent Benso, who's in P number 20 at the moment, or effectively, I guess, P number 19 now. So that's unfortunate that Brett's not going to have the clean air that he quite would have wanted. Hopefully he does have the car speed to be able to make a move on Laurent without too much of a hassle, but these guys up the front, Brian Borg and Cooper Webster have just extended their lead slightly, but Jamie McKnight and Steve Jansen are closing up. And it'll be
Stephen
interesting to
Varga.
see when these guys decide to pit, to maybe a couple of them might want to cover off Brett, or maybe they're not worried about him at all. So it'll be interesting to see if one or two of these guys decide to duck in this time round, or if they stick to the halfway mark and do that. But we've got a couple of interesting moments coming up in the next couple of laps.
Just getting a CPR replay of Stephen Vargo just looping it around at the corner with no name, and just lit it up on the AstroTurf and looped it around. It's got fairly heavy damage to the front of his car, so I would say he'll be in the pits this lap. But
It's very easy to do.
It is very, very easy, especially in the V8 with a throttle that doesn't really like to play friendly. Seeing McKnight now does not have a car in behind because Stevie Jansen has driven into the pits. So he's the one that's going to cover off from that battle pack.
And that's a smart move because Steve was, he was trailing around there with Jamie, not really too close. I mean, they were pretty close to the pack ahead of them, but if none of those guys decided to pit, this is a good opportunity for him to just get into some clean air, not worry about anything that's going on behind him, and just truck forward. But I believe that Brett Loxton may come out ahead of Steve Jansen here. And just have a look at how Brett's been going. He's just overtaking Keith Wheeler in P18, so he was able to get past Laurent Benso pretty easily, and Brett has come out comfortably ahead of Steve Jansen there, who's going to come out behind Laurent Benso again. So looks like they were relatively far apart to begin with.
It's probably about the same gap between those two, so
yeah,
we'll probably see most of that field come out of the pits in between them. And Loxton, we'll see what his first flying lap time is, but that out lap time looks pretty quick. So the guys that he was battling with, Cooper Webster, Brian Borg, Thomas Hinz, they'll need to be careful that that work to get past isn't negated with a very, very nice undercut.
Yeah, I was looking at the pit stops of the other two drivers who already have made their stop, and I didn't notice either of the cars going up on the jacks, which usually tends to mean that those guys haven't taken tyres. So
yeah, they'll definitely take tyres. It only takes about 7 seconds to change 4 tyres in the V8, so full tank of fuel, you can definitely take tyres. So there's no issues there with tyres.
Well, the lap times have been starting to drop off for those guys who are on all the tyres. Even Zane Warren, our race leader, who has extended his advantage to 10.8 seconds at this stage. His last lap at 2:22.7 versus his best lap at 2:21.6, so that's 1 second off the pace compared to his ultimate lap speed. Not sure if he had a particularly bad lap there, or if it was just due to the fact that the tyres have gone off, as Thomas Hinz is going to decide to peel into the pits, coming off that pack with Cooper Webster and Brian Borg. So Brian and Cooper deciding to run it a little bit longer than these guys. Obviously, we're just around hitting the halfway point of this race now, so wouldn't be surprising to see these guys in the next lap or two, but it also wouldn't be surprising to see them run out the tank fully, maybe even go to lap 12 or 13 possibly. So we'll keep an eye on how those guys are doing. But everything's just calmed down for the time being. Everyone's got a couple of seconds between them. Just having a look, Corey Preston is up in P number 12. I don't believe he has pitted at this stage. He wouldn't have, but
No, he hasn't.
I don't know, Jay, on your screen, is he missing his boot?
Yeah, he's got no boot on my screen. Have a look. Thomas Hinz has actually come out just ahead of Brett Loxton as well. So Hinz 1 second quicker pit stop, and he's come out about half a second ahead as he had his big moment up through Eau Rouge, and Loxton might be able to take advantage here with some draft down the straight. Loxton could get Hinz here.
Run. Yeah, he's got a nice run. They're going to weave over the track a little bit as he goes around the outside. Does Brett Loxton turning in, but there's a car there and he has to yield and let Thomas take that position. Thomas was a little bit behind, a little bit ahead of Brett Loxton when Brett came into the pits. So Brett obviously able to, I guess, maintain that gap and close in slightly, but not, probably didn't get that 2 to 3 second advantage that he was looking for on the fresh rubber, as Dane Warren has also put in another 2:22.8. So it does look like around a second a lap is the tyre drop off that we're looking at the moment. So I think Cooper and Brian will want to come in soon, as well as Jamie McKnight. Jamie McKnight's probably the guy out of anyone who would want to extend his fuel, just because he was only really in a battle with
Steve Jansen, he was in the battle with, and
yeah, he was in a
just
battle
had a big
with
slide
Steve Jansen.
through the bus stop chicane. He just had a massive slide. So there's continuing on, as you're seeing, Cooper Webster and Brian Borg have both come into the pits now as we have completed 10 laps. We have another 11 to go.
As Corey Preston going up the inside, who's that? That is David Miller, but David coming back. Corey didn't get a very good exit and actually tagged him on the entry to the second part of that bus stop chicane. So David Miller holding onto that position, and Corey has been turned around by Calvin, and so that is wow, Corey just can't catch a break this race, can he?
No, he's just had everything go wrong. Everything's just gone downhill this entire race.
Leader, yeah, absolutely. As the race leader has actually just come out, I believe. I think he might have just made
he just done his pit stop as well.
Actually just came out ahead of Corey Preston. So Dane Warren getting his pit stop out of the way. Nice amount of clean air in front of him, which he'll be very happy to see. And I'll just go up the front and see Jamie McKnight still plodding around.
Cooper Webster, Brian Borg come out nose to tail as well, and they've come out about 1.5 seconds ahead of Thomas Hinds, so
yeah,
they have gained a little bit of
advantage.
Yeah,
they've been able to keep up that pace really well comparatively to the two guys behind who did stop, and a couple of laps earlier than these guys. Both of those guys taking two very different lines through that corner, but staying around the same pace apart from each other. So with the pit stop phase over, it's now time for these guys to knuckle down and make some passes on the track, because all the strategy's kind of out the window now. The only person who can really do anything right now would be Jamie McKnight, but haven't really been spotting any fantastic times coming through from him, so we'll have to see where he comes out in all this.
His time last lap around was a little bit off. It was about 2 seconds off his fastest lap. He's going to continue on. I'm going to guess he's going to go as long as he can, then fill it as short as he can to try and get ahead of Jansen, who's the main rival in this race for him.
Yeah, as I said, McKnight's probably the most likely person to extend his fuel run on here, just because, as we said before, he was only battling with Jansen and doesn't have too much to lose from that whole situation. So he'll keep on plodding around on lap 12, and he'll be our temporary leader of the race until himself, Mario. Well, it looks like we've got Jamie, Mario, Joe, Calvin, and Brenton O'Brien still pit. So
yeah, most of them are in the lane right now. So.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, only two guys not to pit yet. So they're running the tank as long as they can. Hopefully they don't pull a Michael Taliancic and leave it a lap too late. They have to pull over at the side of turn 1 or 3. But Dane Warren has been putting on a really impressive show compared to his last couple of races that we've been featuring. He's been putting in very, very solid times. His fastest lap is about a second ahead of anybody else. In fact, he's done a 2:21.6, and I can only see one other person in the entire race who's done even a 22.9, and that was Brett Loxton. So Dane Warren has a substantial pace advantage this race, and that is shown at the moment by his fantastic lead, which by the look of it has actually decreased slightly after that whole pit stop phase. It looks like Brian Borg and Cooper Webster were actually able to recover a tiny bit of time on him.
Well, fairly
through
long
that.
stop for Warren. He stopped 22.3 seconds. It's about 5 seconds longer than everyone else. So he's given up 5 seconds in the stop. I guess that's the absolute insurance policy to make it home. If you...
Oh, maybe he was just feeling so comfortable he decided to crack open a beer and have a sip. I mean, he probably could.
He had time.
He definitely did. Definitely did. Yeah, everyone at the moment kind of plodding around with little gaps here and there. No real battle packs at the moment.
McKnight in the pits, so that will negate anything that was going on there with strategy and the like, as we've got 9 to go.
Well, we'll see where he comes out, because it'll be interesting to see, given how many laps previously Jansen pitted, to see where he comes out comparatively to him, and also comparatively to Brett Loxton as well, although there is a pretty sizable gap between those guys at the moment.
Dane Warren, last lap around, his first flying lap after the pit stops, another 2:21.
Yeah, so he's on fire, and I mean, we're not seeing anything better than it.
Well, Borg's just at a 22.3, so good lap from Borg as well.
Yeah.
And Jansen has lost about 3 seconds to McKnight. As we're on board with Jansen, you can see the orange car off in the distance. That is McKnight out of the pits and off and running again. So McKnight has been the winner out of that pit stop cycle in the battle he had with Steven Jansen. So that is done. But pace from Warren and Borg last lap, very, very impressive. A 21.9 for Warren and a 22.3, fastest lap of the race for Brian Borg last lap.
Yeah, and Cooper Webster as well put in a pretty quick one, not as quick as Ryan, but he did a 2:22.7 as well. So, and actually a couple of guys...
Jansen! Steve Jansen stopped. What's happened here?
Let's have a look at that. That's a really bizarre... Oh, okay. I'm going to call that...
Is that a downshift kaboom? Oh, that's a failure of some sort.
That looks like a technical failure on the hardware side. I mean, it could be a software issue.
That's a steering wheel has given way, or a blue screen, or that's something weird, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually just going to go on board with him and just have a... Yeah, that wheel, it not only went 90 degrees, it actually went 270 degrees.
And it's just on the limiter too, bouncing on the limiter, so very strange. And then it's gone kaboom, and then all of a sudden he's regained control and out of the race. No, he's actually going again, so it hasn't gone kaboom. That's good. But that's a scary failure for him.
Yeah, I have known, I have been in situations where things like that have happened to me, but they're very, very few and far between. So it's very unfortunate for Steve, and just looking with him on board now, he's got no front end in that car. He's just going to have to nurse that thing at its very best until the end here. And that's a shame, because he was in a top 10 position here. And I fear that at the pace and that car is not looking comfortable at all. He's got understeer and then oversteer, and I fear that he may even sit outside the top 15 by the end of this race, with still 8 laps to go, or 7 for our leaders at this stage. That's unfortunate for Steve. But a lot of other cars still in the race running, as I think Calvin, who was our race leader, has finally pitted at the end of lap 13, and he's coming out back on track now, just behind Corey Preston, who for me has a boot again.
Yeah,
good for him.
Good, and a great recovery too. He's made his way back up into 13. Pace he's got is probably the second fastest in the race, so definitely deserves to be a lot higher than he is. I feel the pace he's got, he should be able to get the guys ahead and maybe get himself back into the top 10.
Yeah, he's equaling the pace of Brian Borg and Cooper Webster right now. All of these guys are running 2:23.0s a 0.25 from Cooper Webster, 0.55 from Corey, and a 0.89 from Brian. So those guys only separated by a couple of hundredths of a second that last time round. And the car ahead of Corey is a full 1.5 seconds nearly slower than him. So it'll be interesting to see if Corey can make his way back up to those guys. I think he'll be able to, because he's only got a 3-second gap up to those guys ahead of him. At 1.5 seconds, he should be up there in the next couple of laps. Then ahead of that, I think that's where it all starts getting a bit dry for Corey. 7-second gap up to Craig Jones, who's running very similar lap times to Corey himself. So that's probably the best result that Corey can possibly get. Having it nice and smooth at the moment.
And have a look at the pressure that Craig Jones is applying on Julian Schoon ahead of him too. He's doing a great job applying pressure, and he's got a little bit of a run here, so we could see Jones come on through. And I must say, I do really like those new liveries for the CMR team. The two different silvers or greys. Toughest colour to get on the paint on iRacing. I tell you what, they look really, really good.
Yeah, they do. The logo on the side of the car, they're actually very reminiscent. As he gets a bit of contact there from the over-under.
Oh, he's been disqualified.
And Craig's been disqualified. That is such a shame. As we were just talking about how great his car looked, I was just going to say, it's Job Stewart's car just up ahead. The team logo on the side and the colour scheme actually kind of reminiscent of the Aston Martin factory racing team. And their Aston Martin R racing division, very reminiscent, very, very nice colour scheme, especially with the little fluoro accents in the bonnet, in the grille, pardon me, of the Ford there. That's really unfortunate for Craig. He had some real pace. He was, as I said just momentarily before, lapping the same times roughly as Corey Preston, Brian Borg, Cooper Webster, who all qualified very highly in this race. And Brian Borg and Cooper Webster, obviously at the moment, rounding out your podium positions. And Craig's usually a very consistent, very consistent driver. So big shame. And he's actually, Craig Jones is, if I'm not mistaken, he's quite up there in the championship standings as well. He's currently inside the top 10 in the championship standings without taking those drop rounds into account. So that's going to be a very unfortunate hit to his championship contention there. But Corey Preston at the moment still putting in some nice times and catching up to the back of David Miller and Brenton O'Brien ahead of him. So Corey last lap round was a full 7/10 quicker than David and a second quicker than Brenton. So that gap down at about 1.8 seconds at the moment. So he's going to be right on the back of these guys in the next lap and a half or so. And these guys have been having not so much a scrap, but they've been locked pretty tightly for the last 5 or so laps.
They were together before the pit stops as well, because we saw O'Brien with that move up the inside. But I tell you now, I think Miller might be the one to get a move done. So Brian defends, covers.
A bit late that cover, but you know, whatever works. As Brenton gets a nice run out of Blanchimont there, so he's not really going to have much of a hard time coming into the bus stop. And look how much Corey Preston has gained just in that one braking zone. He's pretty much right on these guys now.
He'll get that draft advantage down the straight, and he might be close enough if he gets a great exit out of turn 1. We've only got 5.5 laps to go in this race. It has flown by. 21 laps at Spa feels like a marathon when you say it and say how long it is, but it is flying by with these cars and how intense this race has been.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just having a look as well. My timing could be incorrect, but according to me, Mario Vlasic has a very large number of incidents, and he's going to have to watch out.
Yeah, he's got to be careful.
He's going to have to watch out if he wants to hold on to P number 7. A couple of other guys are pretty high on the incidents as well. Even a slight bump or a couple of off tracks or a half spin could send these guys out of contention. Brett Loxton's one of those people, and despite his pace, Dane Warren does have a significant number of incidents, and Julian Shine as well, another one of those guys with a relatively high incident count.
Yeah, no
And
leeway with track limits here at Spa, but yeah, Dane Warren probably going to be okay. I think he just ran off the track there. But yeah, you're right with the timing. Vlasic is the one that we've got to be concerned of. Obviously, maybe a little bit of netcode involved in the timing showing extra incidents, but
well,
you
yes,
need to be a little
that's
bit careful.
possibility.
But as far as I can tell, Jamie McKnight is on 0, which is amazing at Spa.
Yeah, it is fantastic at Spa. I actually, I lost my pro license at Spa when I did the BGT race here because I racked up, I don't know, 11, I think it was 11 incidents in 25
Oh, O'Brien's
laps or
run
something
wide.
like that.
Preston
O'Brien
coming
has run
through.
very wide, and Preston actually
Into the
he
top
got
10.
yeah, he's back into the top 10. He got past David Miller, got a really good run on the exit of Eau Rouge, and Brenton O'Brien running wide, having to concede that position to Corey, and I don't think Brenton's going to have much of an answer to try and regain that position on Corey. So Corey can now just stick his head down. I think it's not out of the realms of impossibility that he catches Julian.
It's 6 seconds,
but he will.
but he's averaging about 1.5 seconds a lap quicker, so he could be right on his tail with 1 to go. And O'Brien defending.
Very well be. And just behind Corey as well, Brendan O'Brien and David Miller having another go. They're going to have a bit of a drag race that I fear David might lose down into Eau Rouge, but he is right on the back of Brendan as he's going to stick the nose out, going to tuck back in, take the preferred racing line. Brendan taking a nice healthy amount of curb on the inside there, which sets him up for a nice exit. So I don't think David's really going to be able to capitalise on anything there. But yeah, Jamie McKnight is doing a very excellent job up there in P number 6 with 0 incidents at the moment. He is actually...
He's catching Loxton too.
Yeah,
he's got it down to 1.3.
He's our only contender on 0 incidents, but you're absolutely right, Jay. He's closed up and made that gap rather insignificant, lapping about 3 to 4 tenths a lap quicker at the moment. So who knows, that incident count could still jump higher for Jamie McKnight.
Well, got something to burn, hasn't he?
Yeah, he does, and Brett's the guy that's going to have to watch out actually, because according to my timing, possibly a heavy enough contact could put Brett Loxton out of his race, and Brett's got the championship to think about here. So it'd be interesting if Jamie can get up and show that he's got enough pace to get past Brett. It'd be interesting to see if Brett might just move over and keep the points that he'll get, and keep a bit of license rating as well. I think we could have a couple of issues with our timing on the incident count though, because
Vlasic has got 21 apparently for me.
He's actually got 23 for me.
Yeah, so that's definitely not right with the 17-point limit. Those that are wondering what we're talking about, if you run off the track or outside the track limits, you receive an incident point. You are limited to a maximum number of 17 in this race. So very, very tough track with track limits. Running off the circuit is very, very easy to do at this track. And amazingly, McKnight on 0 incidents is absolutely phenomenal for any driver in this sort of car, in any sports car, let alone the V8 Supercar. To have 0 incidents at Spa is an absolutely phenomenal effort. So if you can keep that up and get it there with 0, will be interesting to see. And I've just been reminded too that Loxton's going to be struggling with his rubber, because you pitted the first out of all of our cars to pit, and McKnight the last. So Loxton's going to be really struggling as we've got 3.5 to go.
That is a very good point that you bring up, Jay. That is a massive factor in this battle, and you can see Jamie is already right on the back of Brett now, and Brett just running a bit wide. Jamie able to keep the lines that he wants, running nice and smooth, and not taking the invitation to run as wide as you possibly could because of those incidents. And I know we've been banging on about these incidents for a little bit, but around here, these green sections of the track, the AstroTurf, you can only, in Spa, in real life, you'd probably use all of that and a bit more. I personally haven't driven the track myself, so I couldn't fully comment, but I know in the WEC and in a lot of GT racing, you do see a lot of cars using very healthy amounts of curb. Down here in, I believe what is Stabilo, the Stabilo corners, that's a very easy place to do it. And
through goes
I think
McKnight. Loxton actually got on the brakes there, gave the old double tap of the brakes.
maybe our timing's not so bad in terms of incident limit for Brett there. So Brett opting to just pull back, keep the championship points that he's accrued for 6th position will still be a respectable amount of points, and he's currently sitting in 3rd position in the championship, so any amount of points that he can get will help him towards his ultimate goal of hopefully taking out that championship. But yeah, McKnight, again, big thumbs up on running that alternate strategy to everyone, running the tank as long as he could, and getting on those fresh tyres. He's been able to not only capitalise on Brett, but before Steve had to bail out due to a technical issue, although I think Steve is actually still circulating at this stage. He was able to capitalise and earn a position for that one too. So really nice strategy game from McKnight, even though he may not have the absolute pace of the guys running up ahead of him, as the battle for 2nd and 3rd has started to drop off a little bit as well. I think this battle between Jamie McKnight and Brett Loxton is the tightest battle that we have at the moment. And for everyone wondering as well, earlier when Craig Jones just disappeared off the screen, that is what happens when you do exceed too many incident points. You hit that 17 cap. iRacing doesn't decide to issue you a black flag and let you come into the pits for probably fear that you may just absolutely turf somebody because it no longer matters for you and ruin somebody else's race. So if you were wondering what happened to Craig Jones when he just disappeared off the screen, that's what happened. But yeah, very nice drive tonight from Jamie McKnight. He's been doing very well and just pulling a bit of a gap on Brett Loxton now. So I don't think that we'll be seeing too much more happening from them. The gap at the lead is been holding pretty steady at around 10.5, 10.8 seconds, as Brian Borg's actually the fastest car circulating on track at the moment, by over a second of Cooper Webster behind him, but only a couple of tenths to Dane Warren sitting ahead.
Yeah, 2 laps to go in this race as well, but after that very long pit stop, Warren's got it back to the same gap he had before the stops. Only took him 9 laps to get that gap back out again, but Borg, great drive from him. That pass he made on Loxton, because Warren has a massive moment up the hill. It's been a really good drive from Borg and Webster as well. Both very mature drives from both Borg and Webster to consolidate 2nd and 3rd in this race for now. Yeah,
and you know, I mean, those guys also capitalised on the departure of Marlon McMullen early from the race, and obviously we're able to gain a couple of positions from the foul luck of one Corey Preston, who is making inroads. He was 1.8 seconds faster than Julian on that last lap.
Oh!
Gap between them now down to 1.6 seconds.
He just hit the wall on the straight though. He just clipped the pit wall on the straight, and he's got a little bit of damage on the right hand side. He's got it down to 2.3 seconds, so with a full nearly 2 seconds advantage a lap, he should be right at the tail of Julian with half a lap or so to go, and Julian's really struggling for pace.
Final corner at this stage. Yeah, Julian, that last time round, he was 25.4. Corey lapping on a 24.2. Surprising to see Corey kind of tap the wall there a little bit. I don't know if there was some net code, especially in a right-hand drive car. That wall is very close to your face, so I find it very surprising that he was able to shake hands with the wall there.
Yeah, probably just a slight little lapse in concentration. Trying to concentrate, maybe look at the timing and see how much quicker you are than the guy you're battling, and just sparks flying, and Just a little clip on the wall. Won't have caused any damage to the car other than a little bit of a bump to the actual thing. Oh, Julian Chun's gone anyway. Incident limit hit for Julian. He's out of the
There you go.
race. That's an
Yeah,
easy
well,
pass for Corey.
yeah. Well, you would think that Corey, you know, with the amount of problems that he's had at this race, he might be up near the incident limit, but he's still got a couple of crashes left. But with a 6-second gap to Brenton O'Brien behind him and a 5-second gap to Job Stewart ahead of him, I think he might just be better off just cruising
Warren!
home.
Massive moment. Had it all sorts of crossed up. That's already on. Wow, that was massive.
He's been running very committed through Eau Rouge. Nice
I'm guessing you just saw it.
Yeah, I just saw him getting very crossed up on the AstroTurf on the exit of Eau Rouge. So Dane, and we've seen that a lot from Dane. You know, even if he's been out in the lead, even if he's been catching up, he doesn't have an off switch. He doesn't cruise unless he's having a sip of beer in the pits. When he's on track, he is pushing to the limit. He does not want any possibility of anyone catching up to him, although I have to say in his position with less than a lap to go, I'd probably be more concerned about looping it and losing all that time than having the car behind 10.5 seconds.
Oh, he's having internet issues as well.
Would only be, you know, it wouldn't be the Dane Warren story if he wasn't. He'll probably disconnect about, I'm going to give it 50 metres after the start.
Hopefully it's after.
Tip for you this time, Dane, like you don't do what you did at Montreal, mate. I know you made it, but
He's having fun now. He's just enjoying this lead that he's got. He's got it out to 10 seconds.
I don't think he wants to. I think he probably just wants to get to the end and make sure you don't slam on the brakes just as you get into the. Internet, in and out.
The internet glitched right at the most inopportune time, but through the bus stop chicane will come Dane Warren. Dominant drive. Once he got that lead around the outside at turn 1. No one's been able to match him for pace. Congratulations, Dane Warren. Great drive and a great win here in round 7 of the iRacing official V8 Supercar Series. Ryan Borg, great job from him. He's going to come home in second. Well done to him, and also to Cooper Webster for third. That's 2 very, very good drives.
Yeah, very good results from those guys there, as Thomas Hinds is also just coming over the line, and Jamie McKnight from 10th on the grid. He's been our big mover of the race today, although we've had some other pretty good movers. We've got Mario Vlasic coming over the line with, according to me, 31 incident points. He's going to come over the line P7 from P14 on the grid, so nice little race for Mario there, making up a couple more positions than he fully anticipated to get. Job Stewart coming across the line now for 8th, followed by Corey Preston. He'll probably be quite disappointed with that, given his starting position, but nonetheless it was a good recovery drive, especially considering he was spun again on his way back up to 9th position. Brenton O'Brien with a solid drive. He's a big mover as well, P19 up to P10, so getting past quite a few cars there, and he'll be pretty happy with that result, I imagine.
A few guys that have had fairly hard luck in this race. Steve Jansen has been the biggest loser out of this race, unfortunately, other than Corey Preston, but that...
Or Marlon McMullen.
Yeah, Marlon McMullen, as well as Emily Jones and Matt Morris and Craig Jones. But Jansen, you really have to feel sorry for him, because that was something that was completely out of his control and unexpected, that incident that happened where he ended up in the wall on the straight with some sort of bizarre issue. So
yeah, and that could have been a sixth position finish or a 7th position finish for him then, and as I said earlier, I was fearing he might drop outside the top 15. Well, P16 it is for Steve Jansen. Still good to see. You know, the last couple of weeks we've seen a couple of never give up.
Last car's out of fuel.
Yeah,
makes it home.
I saw Braden Bateman just crawling along the line before. He did not have anything left in the tank. But yeah, good of Steve Jansen there to continue on and not get too frustrated and just throw it all away and give up. Good to see him cross the line, still on the lead lap. So we'll probably head to our results now. Fantastic win from Dane Warren, your no, he's not your championship leader. That's Marlon, who didn't finish the race, but very good performance from Dane with a 9.9 second advantage to Brian Borg in position number 2. A good drive from Brian as well. And Cooper Webster rounds out your podium, losing quite a bit of time in the last bit of the stint there to Brian, but a fantastic result nonetheless. Thomas Hinz coming back in P4. Jamie McKnight moving well through the field and running the tank a little longer than everyone else to make a bit of a different strategy. And that really paid dividends for him to get to P5 and ahead of Brett Loxton, who comes in at P6. Mario Vlasic, the man who can't be touched by incident points, finishing up in 7th position. Job Stewart, nice results from him. He had a really fantastic end to the race last week, albeit in a slightly lower position. So good to see Job inside the top 10. Corey making a good recovery as well, obviously being up as high as position 2 and having some contact with Marlon McMullen early in the race, which put Marlon out of the race. So good to see Corey right back into 9th. And Brenton O'Brien, who had a fairly quiet but progressive race, is going to round out your top 10.
He's disappointed too because there's no Speary points for top 10. It's only top 8, so he's disappointed with that. But 11th will be David Miller, who actually had a pretty good battle with Brenton for most of the race. They were nose to tail for a lot of the race. Wasn't a huge amount of passing, but they were very, very close. Then we've got Calvin Florian in 12th and Shannon Mason in 13th. Braden Bateman next in 14th. Stephen Varga, Steve Jansen, Keith Wheeler, and Laurent Benzo rounding out the finishers with Julian Schoen, Craig Jones, Matt Morris, Emily Jones, and Marlon McMullen did not finish the race. Another awesome night of racing, though. We've had another awesome battle, or some awesome battles throughout the field. And next week we head to Alton Park, which is going to be just as action-packed, a lot tighter than this circuit, and one that always seems to put on a real show in the V8 Supercar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Alton Park is a fantastic little track. It's going to be a very good race, as have all the races that we've been broadcasting this season. I know we haven't done the full pledges. We had a bit of a holiday period there, but the last couple of races that we've come back for have been very impressive. Seen a couple of different winners, couple of different guys on the podium, lots of different drivers. But you know, this championship is still looking very hot and very up in the air as to who could possibly win this. Obviously, with our championship leader not finishing, and Dane Warren, who's obviously our returning champion, who hasn't done as many races as most other people, he'll be happy to secure another win here at Spa-Francorchamps. So the rest of this season is going to be very interesting, and I have no doubt that we're going to see quite a few guys looking to get on the top step towards the end of the season.
And we've got a pretty cool little schedule left to round out this season. We've got Donington Park, which we've only driven at twice in the entire time that Donington's been released on iRacing, so that'll be interesting. Phillip Island, Bathurst, and Road Atlanta as well, which will coincide with the weekend of V8 Scops. So 5 really cool tracks that we'll see some really cool racing in the V8 Supercar coming up. So I'm really looking forward to the end of this series, and it's going to be very, very close and action-packed throughout, and good chance for some drivers to get on a broadcast and have a good show that don't necessarily get on one, especially with V8 Scops and the like. So if you are umming and ahhing about whether you want to race, jump in and do it. Have some fun. It is good fun racing out there, so make sure you do it.
Yep. And the worst thing that can happen is you lose some iRating and a bit of SR.
Nothing
Not a
that
big
you can't
deal.
get back next week.
Exactly.
Next broadcast, though, the commencement of the Oceanic Sprint Championship. GT3 Racing returns here on V8 Online, and looking forward to Season 2 of OSC next on Wednesday. 2 more days. We head to Daytona again for what feels like our 20 millionth broadcast. It's been there for the last 3 weeks, but we'll be there for both the OSC, and then obviously the major series on the weekend as well. And then the week after, we'll be back there as well for Rallycross. So we feel like we're halfway through our stint at Daytona. It's
Yeah, it's getting a lot of love.
It is getting
this
a lot
time
of love.
year.
Always does though in January. Always find every series goes there in January, and then no one goes back there again until January next year. So always gets very, very heavily used, but it is a fantastic track. And major series on Sunday. Cannot wait for that. Cannot wait for OSC. Some really cool series coming up on V8 Salon. And of course, Blancpain not far away for you guys as well, with pro licenses just being handed out. And I think 19 Aussies are going to be competing this year.
Yeah, well, we were lucky. I mean, we weren't lucky. We put in a lot of really hard effort and managed to get 2 more cars into the Blancpain GT Championship, which is a fantastic effort from the guys at Evolution Racing Team. But yeah, we have quite a few Australians in those teams, including Bo Albert, who sadly couldn't join us tonight. But yeah, so I mean, the Blancpain GT Championship, irrespective of if there are Australians in it or if there aren't, it's a fantastic series to watch, and it's up there with the pinnacle of some of the most competitive esports racing you'll ever see. So if you are, I know for us Aussies, it's a bit of a tough one, because I mean we're starting the races at sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, and they can go for 6 hours, 7 hours. So if you can stay up and come watch us, I'm sure all the Aussie guys would really appreciate a lot of Aussie support. But we'll take it from everywhere, and so if you can manage to come along and have a look, you definitely should. But you should also make sure that you're tuning into all the fantastic broadcasting on the V8's online web service, as we've got a lot of fantastic content coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yep, heaps of stuff coming up. Make sure you like us on all of the social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. But Zach, thank you for jumping in the booth once again tonight. I think
always a pleasure.
Put on a great show for us, and we'll wrap it up now. Thank you for tuning in here on V8 Online. As we said, we'll return in 2 days' time for the Oceanic Sprint Championship. Until then, it's bye from everyone here at V8 Online. Thanks for watching.